This is Fit to Succeed in partnership with NordicFitnessEducation.com with hosts Ben Pratt. Thanks for joining us.
You also don't need to do loads of training. Like, that's the paradox of what I've just said. And with some things, like the example of the Fit Program coaching, it was kind of a non-negotiable. She couldn't do what she wanted to do unless she does this course. Phase of 5 days seems to make a big difference. And then when they are ovulating as well, we just need to see how they respond. Some have high energy levels, some have lower energy levels.
Okay, I'm so pleased today to have with me Kim Ingleby. She's a coach, a writer, a speaker, ambassador, an athlete, and many other things we could use to describe this woman who's with us today. Kim, it's great to have you here.
It's great to be with you. Thank you for asking me. I'm looking forward to it.
Oh, wonderful. I appreciate your time today. Now, as if anyone was to go to your website, Kim, and to give a bit of a read of your bio, and one of the things that certainly impressed me was the amount of things that you've managed to cram into your life. You've done so much, and those few words I just started out with there probably don't do justice to the things that you've been able to accomplish. Now, back in 2004, you set up your company, Energized Performance. And when you first started your journey in the health and fitness space, did you think you would have achieved everything that you've achieved to date?
Oh, lots of thoughts in there. Thank you for the introduction. Did I think I'd be where I am? Yes, in one way, okay. Because I've always been really determined and focused. So I think how it's developed was my vision and my purpose and what I set out to achieve. But what has come along with it is a whole load of other amazing opportunities and the type of people that I'm working with and the depth of people and the places I've gone. No, I didn't. I sort of had a dream that might happen, but I never believed that it would be actually happening. Mm-hmm. So a bit of like, yes, but also there's so much more if you keep your mind open to opportunities and you just get out there and have conversations.
Mm-hmm. Now, you mentioned there the word dream, that you sort of dream some of these things. One of the things that many people in business talk about, particularly in fitness, is we talk about having a vision, having the ability to look ahead and to see what we can achieve. Did you have some kind of clear vision in those early days as to what you wanted your business to become?
I had a pretty good idea when I was at school, which is sort of, I think the idea came together when I was probably about 14, and I thought I want to really help people in their confidence and fitness, and that was twofold, because one, I really suffered from low body confidence, self-esteem, and sort of disordered eating, and just really wasn't comfortable in myself. So one was I want to give people tools and resources that they don't feel like I felt. And the other side was I was riding horses semi-professionally, and I could see that riders and people in sport weren't as fit and confident as they could be. So there was sort of like a negative away from motivation, and there was a positive one. And together I thought, this is what makes me happy, and I can see how it makes other people happy, and I want to learn how I can do this. But obviously the industry was quite young then, so I had a lot of resistance even from my family of entering into the industry. Nice. So it wasn't a quick or easy transition, but I just had this idea of, if I can help people believe in themselves and have a bit more confidence to do what they want to do, that's going to be amazing. Mm-hmm. So that's how it came together.
Some really interesting thoughts that come to my mind when you were sharing those things with us is, currently now, you've just recently been put up as a finalist in an award for NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, as a practitioner. And there's no doubt that particular skill set is very much around being able to reframe and to make things positive and to help people move at the pace that they're able to at that given time. When you look back to your early years, just starting in the industry, as you said, getting some resistance from your family, what was your mindset at that time, and how did you ensure that you continue to move in the right direction?
Right in the early days, I did PE for my standard grade and higher because I was born in Scotland. And so that was the first point. And a PE teacher really believed in what I was doing. And so that gave me, he was called Norrie Berner back in the day. And that gave me a sort of a little bit of confidence of like, there's something there. But then I went on to ride horses professionally. So that filled my time. And I actually did a degree in international business, which time was, I wasn't sure how it was going to help, but I wanted to run my own business. And that was sort of agreed with my dad that I would do that first. And he said, and then, you'll go into business. And I said, no, I'm going to do the personal training. And it was this agreement stroke joke that he never thought I would. And I just went into the personal training straight afterwards. And actually, I really value and thank him because it was the best decision, because I have this international business degree combined with the personal training and sports therapy. And the combination of the two just gave me a skill set that I think at that point was just invaluable. And I did I worked for Matt Roberts for a period of time. Then I worked for a small private family-run business, a gym, and then I worked for David Lloyd. And I purposefully chose those 3 clubs before I set up fully on my own, because I wanted to see how the different areas worked. And I also wanted to get the experience, because I knew that if I wanted to be really good, I had to put myself in environments that would challenge me and also see how the different models worked. So that was sort of how the journey developed. And obviously I was doing professional sport and I'd done the business. And so I had all these different facets. And meanwhile, I was running Energised on the side, and everyone was aware of that, and just gradually building it up and thinking, okay, so what do I want my business to represent?
So if I just try to be sure I'm understanding you correctly, you had started in the fitness industry prior to setting up Energised in 2004, or you set it up and then worked in some of these establishments at the same time?
No, so I graduated with my degree in 2001. You're making me think. Then I did personal training and sports therapy. So I did 18 months working in those establishments before I founded Energised, but I did the business cards and I set it all up when I was doing my personal training course. I just realized then that I needed more experience at that point in different environments with clients to then be able to grow it. So yes, I did short term.
I think that's really wise. When I consider that you have taken on board this business, which is often a skill many people in the fitness industry tend not to do so well at, and you'd already got that skill when you entered the industry, but to then still have the foresight to recognize, if I can experience what the industry is like across a range of clubs, Matt Roberts, a relatively small, high-end personal training business, a family business, and then a large chain. How did, taking on board those 3 different segments of the industry before you started Energised, how did that set you up for success?
I'm incredibly grateful to all of those experiences, just because I learned so much. They gave me so much, just in how you could run different types of businesses. And they were in different places as well. So Matt was in London, the small gym was in Gloucestershire, and then the David Lloyd was in Bristol. So they were very different environments as well. And I had to commit to doing it in my own mind, because it wasn't something I really, particularly the bigger clubs, I didn't really want to do it. I wanted to get on with my own thing, but I thought I can't be naive and think I can just do it without actually really experiencing people and businesses that are really good at it, and get them to challenge me and push me, and meet different types of clients. So each experience gave me a huge amount, and I would highly recommend to people taking those different opportunities, because they will give you something. And I suppose I take my business knowledge for granted, but the more I mentor entrepreneurs and fit pros, I realize that I have a depth of skills from that degree, and also from a work placement. I worked with Crew Clothing in their head office on my industry work placement, and so that was also a key point in Energized Performance, it showed me so much, you know, working with them, doing a lot of trade stands, shows, fairs, marketing, design, graphics, and
Wow.
all of that. It was invaluable. You know, that was probably the key thing in setting up Energize, working for Crew on their placement was yeah, invaluable advice there.
Yeah, and that's it's certainly something I would encourage everybody to know the value of business skills to actually have success in your
Absolutely.
business as a professional. Now, let's just talk a moment about your brand Energized Performance, and then I would like to talk a bit more about training female clients, which is something I think you seem to excel at. Your concept for Energize is around this idea of mind and body coaching. And
Yeah.
I just wonder, is there any sort of prioritization with that? You've put mind first, and every time I've seen you write about it, you always say mind, then body coaching. Was there an intentional reason why it was that way around and not body, then mind?
So I hadn't done the NLP training when I set up Energized, but obviously in my degree, I did do a lot of psychology and business psychology. That was one of the majors, along with accounts and finance, which I found incredibly hard, but chose because I found it hard. And it was complete body management was the tag I had when I set up. And then after probably 4 years, I was getting really, really good results, but people were saying I'm not confident or I don't believe in myself, you know, things which are really common, and that sort of imposter syndrome, but they'd achieved, you know, the endurance events, or they'd achieved great things, but it wasn't connecting. And I was like, I don't know how to help them. And so I started researching. I referred back into my degree, and I looked at a lot of the things that I'd done with the Harvard Business Reviews and, you know, those kind of articles. And I thought, I didn't want to do another degree at that point because I really wanted to grow my business. So I found neurolinguistic programming. It was quite young and in the early stages. And I thought that's going to give me the missing link, I think. And also it's going to massively challenge me as a trainer. So it's going to make me better, because even now I still kind of, you know, like anybody, doubt myself at times. And I think our weaker areas of our personality will often still be there, but it's understanding how to manage it and learn from it. So I did the prac course, and then I left it a couple of years, and in 2006 I did my master's in hypnotherapy, NLP, timeline therapy. I did a life coaching diploma, sports psychology diploma, and I really heavily invested in my knowledge then. And it was really then that I had the confidence and the depth of skills, and I specifically trained with people who assessed you as a client as well as a coach, which I thought was invaluable, because you can learn all the tools and skills, but if you haven't experienced it as a client and you've not kind of got into those uncomfortable processes, it's kind of harder to really work with somebody with empathy and things. So I did all of that, and so long answer, that's when the mindset stuff came in. And over the last probably like 6-7 years, I've just been known by my clients. They're like, you're the mind ninja, you're the mind body ninja. And you know, so the process that I work with people absolutely isn't for everybody, but it's become what people say I give them, is the courage to do what they want to do, even if they're not confident, and then they grow in confidence. And so that's why it's mind and body. To me, they come together, and it's working with them to work out if they're very stressed in their life. Sometimes the lifestyle and body changes are simpler to do to start with. But if they really want a transitional or transformational change, you normally have to shift some mindset habits first. So I think it's a combination, and the word journey is used a lot, but it's a process that takes time, and it's continually evolving because your environment and everybody else's environment's changing.
Yeah, fantastic. It's as you were talking about that, it's great to see that we don't always have to have the revolutionary business ideas at the start. You know, you had a different kind of tagline for your business to begin with, but as you evolved who you were, you adapted how your business was going to face the general public. And I love that they call you the mind body ninja,
Yeah.
With all of your skills, I wonder if you've done some ninja.
Yeah, well, one client actually knitted me a little black ninja, and now, like, whenever I'm doing races, this ninja like comes along, and it's just kind of nice because it works. It works for them, and it also humorizes with respect the mind stuff, because it can be quite heavy, can be quite challenging, and it's often not very comfortable for people. And I always say, a little bit of humor with it, a little bit of, just fun things that people can tag to, release the pressure a bit.
Indeed. Now, I have one question which has kind of just come to me now, and before we go into the stuff around female clients, and that is, when I think about for you to get where you are now, I'm sure many people are listening and thinking, oh, wouldn't that be amazing to be in that place? But you've done 2 degrees in order to be able to have the skills that you have, and that may be unattainable for some people in the fitness industry to look and go, wow, I don't have time or the resources to do a business degree or to do a psychology, hypnotherapy type degree. Have you got any thoughts for those people who would like to move forward in developing similar sort of skills? What could they do if they don't have those resources to take on a degree?
Yeah, I was really lucky because, one, with my riding, I got great support, and I also had 3 jobs. Basically, I was riding horses, being paid for that, mucking out, and I worked in a pub and a club afterwards. So I wouldn't really recommend that.
It's a tough way.
It was the masters with the NLP, and that obviously my business had been established, so I could then offset the costs and run it through that. There are loads of different grants around, and there are different sponsorship awards and different applications. They take a long time to fill in, but there are ways that you can kind of access training. You just have to look around, and a lot of people say I don't have time for that, but I would say if you really want to expand your knowledge and get the right support, just make that time. I know it's hard, but make it, because it will pay dividend. And also filling in application forms for me has always given me clarity in my business. So it's paid back for me, even if nothing has come from doing those applications or applying for awards or grants. So there are a lot of things out there that people don't realize. There are also, don't be afraid to ask. So if you can't do what the payment structure is, don't be afraid to ask and just say, I am really passionate about doing this. How could you make it work? I'm mentoring a fit pro who's doing doing a master's as well, and that's what we did. She was like, I don't know how I can do it, but we were working with her big vision of what she wants to do, and it was really kind of like a no-brainer. There was no option but doing this if she wanted to do that. So I got her to email the email the university and say, this is what I would like to do, this is where I want to go, what can you do? And it took her 18 months to work it out. She reframed some things, she put some other stuff to make some more money. We played with it, and yes, it's hard, and yes, it's challenging, but it's so rewarding if you want to do it. I think my add-on to that is about life priorities. So if you have young children, you're caring for family that aren't well, you've got life stuff that is eating your time, maybe now isn't the right time to do that, but do something shorter online, which will give you a base, which will maybe give you credits towards something. Because I'd like to do an MBA, but it's out of my reach, but I'm doing little things that are adding on bolt-ons, and I've been doing that for I think 6 years now. And so that's kind of got year 1 almost ticked. So yeah, it's going to take me forever, but actually, isn't that better than going, I just can't do it? That's my mindset anyway.
Yeah, I mean, what you're expressing here, I talked about in a recent podcast with another expert, is the growth mindset of working towards things, knowing that if I make mistakes along the way, that's okay, but I'm heading in the right direction rather than being defeated, as you suggested. Let's switch.
Can I also jump in quickly and just go, you also don't need to do loads of training. Like, that's the paradox of what I've just said, is the opposite is lots of people say, I need to have this, this and this before I can do this. And with some things, like the example of the Fit Pro I'm coaching, it was kind of a non-negotiable. She couldn't do what she wanted to do unless she does this course.
Right.
But with others, it's like you probably have a whole load of resources accessible to you that you haven't utilized yet. If you don't have the time or money, think about how can I utilize what I know to then bring in the money and put that aside. My mentor, I've always had mentors. I think it's a good value of mine that I'm coached and I get uncomfortable so that I coach other people. But the lady that I'm working with, I saved up for 2 years. I worked out what I needed to put aside because her fees are high, but that encouraged me to grow. Or I could have just said that's not possible. So I think it is a mindset. Not everybody has that. You have to work out what your priorities are, what your values are, and what you really want to make happen. But if you can't make it happen at the moment, either work out that saving plan and it will empower you, or work out what skills you have and be brave and put something out there to make the income whilst, life is maybe taking over.
Mm-hmm. I think that's some great advice, and particularly that having the courage. Sometimes it does take courage to go out there and try something that you maybe haven't tried before, and I think that's great advice. Let's just switch up gears a little bit here now. Kim, you have spent a lot of time emphasizing that in helping females and female clients in particular. Would you mind just maybe explaining to the listeners, your overarching principles? Don't get into the detail too much, but the overarching principles of how you would train a female client different to a male client.
Oh, not the details. So every client I train personally for them. So I have systems, but it's first of all, let's get to know that person. Let's get to know, which I just touched on, their lifestyle, what's important to them, and what their biggest struggle is right now. So with women, I find that it's a much broader struggle. So with guys, it's very black and white. This is the problem. And 9 times out of 10, if they're ready, this is the solution, and this is how we're going to change things. Okay. With women, we just we have many more emotional layers, and these are general comments, okay? So take that with a pinch of salt. But we have many emotional layers, and obviously we have our hormones, we have periods, we have the family pressure, we have the psychology of like whether you can have children, can't have children, the priorities of whether you want to be an ambitious woman or you want to be, a stay-at-home mum. So there's a really like complex personality around sort of being a female, which is actually also really positive. Mm-hmm. And so it's about understanding that individual and how I can help them at that time in their life, because it's very different at different stages for each woman. And so my specialism is helping women have the courage to create what they can with where their life is, which will develop their confidence and self-esteem, not necessarily, what they would love to have, which they maybe can't have at that point in time. And I also work with a lot of women who are very ambitious, very highly motivated, very focused, and they're close to burnout, but they have imposter syndrome as well. So they don't believe in themselves, so they have this internal lack of self-esteem, but externally it looks like they're doing incredibly well and they're juggling 500 balls, but they're inside, they're sort of close to breaking point. And that would be, mums, entrepreneurs, and then athletes. And but it's just a real passion of mine, probably because I can associate with it, of how can I help them have that internal self-esteem and self-worth to go out and value what they're doing.
I think, Kim, as well, if any of the listeners want to read up on your story, there's no doubt in my mind that you have an experience in life where you're certainly able to empathize with exactly what you said there, the drive and the ambition to achieve a lot in life. You get real busy, but underneath it and in the background, there's a lot of challenges that you had yourself. And so I'd love to have some discussion with that with you, maybe on another call. But for today, I think you've shared some good things. You also mentioned there something I think is very important. You mentioned with females, one of the considerations is the ebb and flow of the monthly menstrual cycle and the hormonal changes that happen throughout the month.
Yes.
Perhaps it would be interesting if you could just sort of outline how that might vary, from when a woman begins her period throughout the month until, she passes ovulation and into the next phase. What approaches do you apply to adjust or personalize your training delivery based on the time of month and the cycle phase that the woman might be in?
It's a great question. And it's really nice to be asked it by a guy, because lots of people just avoid those questions. And it's probably the first question that I ask, my female clients is, how is your period? How does it affect you? And are you aware of, your energy and your mood and your sleep and your eating patterns when you're training? And 9 times out of 10 people don't connect it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they don't. Well, they know it, but they don't actually connect it and go, maybe that should be a better time to have a rest week or a recovery adaptation phase. Again, I do find each woman's different, because, some are taking the pill, some don't have periods. Some, because I coach a lot of endurance athletes, or I've done some research, not the word athlete, but people who do endurance.
Yeah.
And the female triad comes in place, and I'm always amazed by the number of females who are doing their first endurance event, so a marathon or a triathlon or a climbing Mount Kilimanjaro, and they just don't eat enough food.
Do you want to just explain the female triad? Sorry to interrupt. I just think that might have gone over a few people's head. What does he mean by the female triad?
Okay, so if I was just simply explaining it to one of my clients, it's just how much food that they're bringing in and how much energy they are expending, and is it like borderline to affecting their hormones? So they may have lost their periods, they may be losing bone density, they may be in sort of a pre-burnout state, and they may have adrenal fatigue or on the borderline of adrenal fatigue. There's loads of research. It's a whole discussion for like half an hour, but it's basically affecting the female's well-being, and that's kind of how I would explain it to my clients, is that they're feeling very burnt out and tired, and they're trying to overtrain because they're not ticking all their training boxes, but they're not resting enough, they're not sleeping enough, they're not eating quite enough, because they're comparing themselves to what they used to do before they were training for an endurance event. Right. They're comparing themselves to a colleague who doesn't eat much. Right. And so a lot of the work I would do, this is slightly, it is appropriate for the hormones, is not comparing themselves with past experience and not comparing themselves to others, but actually doing a mind and body journal of like, how is your sleep, how is your mood, how is your energy, what food are you eating? So it's a very intuitive, self-aware diary, and then from that we'll track that over 3 months with their period. I use a lot with the DNA fitness, because I find that that's been empowering for people, because although it's just your DNA and it's a base, if I can see where their injury and inflammation markers are from their DNA, and I can see what type of food and supplements DNA wise might help them, it seems to help them because it's personalized to them, and it's one-off costs. So it's generally affordable for most people, whereas doing bloods and food intolerances is more, you have to do it multiple times. So I find it a really good base tool, and personally have used it loads. So we would track that for 3 months, and I don't have a set protocol for female clients because everyone is different. Sure. But generally, I would say over a month, there is 1 week that most people will find that they should drop their training down, and that will be the exception.
What week would that be in their period, in their monthly cycle?
With the most of my clients?
Yes, general rule.
Yeah, leading up to the period or during the period.
So just prior to them having their period tends to be a down week? And then what was
the first 2 days of the period and the few days before. There's lots of research that would say different weeks, different times. Sure. But in my professional experience of coaching the clients, that phase of 5 days seems to make a big difference. And then when they are ovulating as well, we just need to see how they respond. Some have high energy levels, some have lower energy levels. So it's just, we do a detection for 3 months and an observation, and we make gentle changes with that. But it's also, I think with nearly every athlete, so endurance or stage or whoever, or just an everyday person, it's understanding their lifestyle, because the last thing I want to do is stress them more by trying to get them to analyze in their head, their period. So it's got to work for them.
So
does that answer?
It does, yeah, it's good. Yeah. Do you notice, for example, we talk mainly around endurance there, but let's say in relation to strength training, do you notice any difference in strength throughout a typical monthly cycle with females? As the way they might perform better or not so good based on their energy, health, things like that during that monthly cycle?
Yeah, I think the 2 weeks after the period is when they're going to be lifting strongest and getting the best response.
So just up to ovulation and then after. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I think that's with when I'm going through them in my mind, that's when I get the best responses with them. But other people may have different experiences, and I'd love to hear that. But that's when I would find that personally I would get the best responses as well, because I've trained stage shows as well as doing the endurance, and then coach sort of, all sorts of people in between who just want to feel fit and well and confident, say on the beach or skiing or whatever. And I think those 2 weeks are good, as long as you fueled everything well leading up to it.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Now,
so many it's like,
there is.
Talk about hours, and there's so many different opinions. And people ask me like, what's the best diet or what's the best this or that, and I'm like, it's listening to your own body, it's finding your own triggers. It's often you're not hungry for food, you're hungry for like maybe something else in your life and you're not getting it. So you might have your job and it's not rewarding you, so then you go and eat too much food, or you lack confidence, so you undereat. And the psychology behind it is really interesting, and then the science. And I love the science and the psychology, and so we could talk forever, and I hope that this is helpful to people listening.
Yeah, I agree. And, for me, it was more interesting to get your views there from your professional experience. I'm well aware many people want to know the best, and often there isn't a best, because as you've been talking several times in this podcast so far, it's actually each individual will be different, and our role as trainers is to personalize their experience. But sometimes getting the overarching sense of what you've experienced as a trainer who's trained hundreds of people is really valuable. We're coming close to time, but I've got a couple of questions just to try and squeeze in here. The first is in relation to the typical barriers that you may find people come across, particularly female clients. Can you maybe share one or two more common barriers that you have found that may prevent a client's progress, and what steps you have found to be successful in helping those clients overcome those barriers?
Yeah, great question. Time. I don't have time. Time is 100% the problem that everybody has now. I think they always did, but at least the last 5 years, I'd say it's become a real problem because of social media, and that, we're accessible the whole time, and therefore that puts pressure under everybody. And so I think helping people change very small habits consistently. So a lot of people I coach, by the time they come to me, they really want to achieve something, so they're ready and they want it to happen within the next 2 or 3 months, say, but life is busy. And so it's actually embedding new habits consistently that are small and achievable, and sort of seeing it as a whole lifestyle change, and planning the change over, say, 9 months rather than 6 weeks. And then you will find that the lifestyle and the habit changes have happened, not just that you followed a plan, got results, and then you go back to your old habits. So the time would be the first thing. The second one is also, I don't believe that I can do it, or I'm scared of achieving it. So, fear of success, fear of failure. So I work with people on, your identity of like, why do you want to achieve this, and how will you look and feel when you do achieve this, but not in a sort of just a fluffy question, but in a real, like, let's write it down, let's break it down, let's really work out why this is important to you, why you want to make it happen. And that means that when you have a bad day, that we all have, you'll realize why you want to do it. You'll realize why it's important to you. But it's also important to help somebody, I say, like, up level or shift their identity, because or else you've not changed. If you change your habits, but you still believe you're the older person, then your old habits will come back. So that's why a slightly more patient time frame will help someone to find the time and also shift the identity, so that they can in 9 months be living slightly differently and adding more value.
I really appreciate both of those answers. In my experience as a trainer, time is a big factor, both for males, but perhaps even more so for females, particularly if they're mums. You know, I totally relate to that. And the self-belief, I think it took me time to really realize how much that mattered to people. But to hear how well you sort of shared that, I totally agree. I totally agree.
Yeah.
Right, for a final question then, if you were to go back, had the ability to travel back in time, Kim, and you went back to speak to yourself just as you were embarking on your, I'm not going to make this fitness trainer focus, but if you were, just as you were starting to embark on your more, what's the word, expansive athletic career, so to speak, because you've done a lot of things, some pretty challenging things. So if you could go back in time, what advice would you give yourself from your perspective that you have now to somebody who wanted to achieve a lot? Because you've represented GB, and you know, what advice would you give yourself?
I love this question because everybody, when I've been interviewed, everybody says, what would you ask your younger self? So I'm going to answer that, but I'm going to add a bit.
Sure.
If younger trainers, and I've been younger as in just coming to the industry, so any age at entering the industry, don't be afraid of asking for help. Or advice, not necessarily help, but just advice. And don't be afraid to talk about your ideas. I was so, you know, I had so many ideas, but I was too shy to kind of ask for help. And I think I would have got even more advice if I could just, you know, have reached out a little bit more and believe in myself in the beginning. I think it's also totally fine if you don't know something. Because I know, the more I know, the less I know. And I know that's a common quote, but even now, I sort of sometimes doubt myself, and you're very kind in saying, you know, I've achieved all these things, but I have, you know, the next level of aspirations. So where I aspire to, I'm kind of like, oh, there's a long way to go, which then I would say, when you're starting out, enjoy the process. When I'm coaching somebody to get ready for anything that they've really wanted to do, I'm like, please enjoy this process. You will have done the absolute best that you can have done. It might not have been the best, but enjoy it. And that takes me to springing forwards and going, I always say to people, often when you do something first, you do enjoy it. And then you put kind of restrictions and rules next to yourself of like, now I must achieve this and now I must do that. And I coach a lot of established people and fitness professionals who are close to burnout. I coach media and celebrity people who lack self-esteem. And when they first asked me, I thought, ironically, what on earth could I do to help them? And fortunately, I had the courage to go along and meet with them. And it was kind of humbling to go, they have achieved so much, and if I could name them with confidentiality, I can't, but you would know who they are. And they really lack self-esteem and that sense of contentment in themselves. And so what I would say is, whoever you are listening to this, just remember to take a pause and enjoy, like now, however tough it is. Enjoy the moment, but also give yourself time to switch off your devices and, you know, not keep progressing, and know that there is a benefit in the pause, you know, that it's okay to pause. And I think in the health and wellness industry, ironically, it's very accessible, it's very long hours, and, you know, we're health and wellness and fitness and all of this, but look after yourself. Because your health is also your business, and so don't be afraid to pause. And if I could take my younger self and tell me now, give myself advice, it would be still to be courageous, you know, to take those risks, to push some boundaries. And it doesn't matter if you've achieved things, because sometimes people get limits because they've achieved things. So I think there's advice both ways, and it's often good to ask somebody, what would a younger you advise you to do now? And I've had great responses from people that have helped them shift doing it that way around.
Excellent. I really like the pause concept. I think with the world of social media, there's so much comparison, as you've alluded to already. We see, you know, there's so many people we can end up following, and every single one of them looks like they're doing great things, and we just compare ourselves and beat ourselves up. So I love the ability to go, let's shut off from all of that influence and just enjoy the now. And also, I think, you know, I agree that we sometimes also need to recognize what we have achieved. Because everybody's been on a journey, no matter how far down that road they are. And if we don't sort of see where we've come from, sometimes we only see the great distance there is to go. So, hey, Kim, it's been such a pleasure spending time with you today. I really appreciate your thoughts, your insights from the career you've had so far, and also the way that you've looked forward to the career that's yet still to come. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. And if any listeners have questions, just, ask away. And we've only touched on everything briefly, but it's been great. So thank you very much.
Great stuff. And I will, of course, include all of your ways to connect and link with you, Kim, on the show notes. So thanks very much, and have yourself a great day.
Yeah, you too. Thanks.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe and share via social media. You can also rate the show on iTunes, Stitcher, or YouTube. If you'd like to know more about us, then check out our range of online courses at www.nordicfitnesseducation.com.